Welcome to your Wednesday and Thursday news and notes. I also have got a couple of free selections for you on today's feature, so let's get to it. We're going to touch on some different topics, show you a little bit how to use the Phil Steele Plus site, and show you how to use just philsteele.com. We've got some interesting things up there for you, some charts, some graphs. Thought I'd share them with you, show you where to find them, and that way you can use them each and every week. A couple of quick notes for you. First of all, I'm going to go back to one of the things I brought up last Wednesday for Baylor. An amazing stat. Matt Rule came into last week 12-1 straight up as an underdog of 7 or less his last 13 games. And guess what? They beat Oklahoma State 45-27. We're going to keep that one in our back pocket, huh, guys? 13-1. So if he's a dog, a 7 or less, odds are Baylor's going to win outright. Play not only Baylor plus the points, but play the money line. Matt Rule has been money when it comes to that. All right, let's go to the front page of philsteele.com. When you go to the front page, we got our news and our daily blogs up here. One of the things we're going to take a look at is the NFL strengths of wins, pain of losses. Now, what this does, it gives you a win for every opponent's win of a team you defeat, but you also get the loss for any loss of the opponent you defeated. So as you can see, New England, even with 7 wins, has only defeated foes that have won a total of 12 games this year. Meanwhile, New Orleans comes in number 1. 21 wins their opponents have that they have defeated this year. They only have 6 wins, not 7, but their foes have won 21 games. Green Bay's number 2 at 19, Kansas City 15. Look at this. The Rams and Indianapolis both have only 4 wins, but the teams they've defeated have won 13 games. That ranks them number 4 overall. Now, it also shows you the pain of losses. And as you see here, very surprising, the LA Chargers. A lot of folks thought Super Bowl contender coming in the year. Not only do they have 5 losses, but those 5 losses have come against teams that have lost a combined 19 games this year. That puts them down in the Atlanta, Miami, Cincinnati territory. Not what you would expect out of the Chargers. And then this combines them here. Naturally, New England at the top, they have not lost a game all year. Neither have the San Francisco 49ers. And when we take a look at Frisco here, let's go click on San Francisco for a minute. As you see, not a single loss. But the team San Francisco has defeated so far have only won a total of 11 games. So New England's record superior there. Look at this, the Buffalo Bills. They're not undefeated, no. So how do they have 0 losses? Well, the one team that the Bills have lost to so far this year has been the New England Patriots. Patriots haven't lost, so the Bills don't get credit for any losses. Now, the teams they've beaten, the Jets, the Giants, Cincinnati, Tennessee, Miami, have only accounted for 6 wins all year. So that's a pretty soft schedule with the exception of New England. Quite a difference. Your 1 loss to an undefeated team, most of your wins against teams that are nearly winless. But Buffalo ranks up here. And then, as you see, once you get the percentages involved, New Orleans, Green Bay, Seattle, Kansas City, Minnesota, even the Rams are up here. The Rams right around 500, 13-6, 68%. So that is your strengths of wins. And when you look down here at the bottom, the Chargers, 4-19, not a team you'd expect to have near the bottom there. So that's how to use that chart. It's up there every week. Make sure you check it out. Let's go for something else right now, and it's going to be my weekly rant on Clemson. Clemson just dropped to number 4 in the AP poll. Yeah, they had a horrible performance last week. All the note was about Trevor Lawrence tossing a couple interceptions in the end zone. You know what? They had a 45-10 win over Louisville. That's the same Louisville team that took Notre Dame, played them within 18 points, and everybody was talking about how good Louisville is. Louisville just went on the road and knocked off Wake Forest the week before, a very good Louisville team, and Clemson just shut them down. Look at this defense for Clemson, allowing 256 yards per game, 49% completions. They're holding their opponents to 165 yards per game below their season average. That's number 2 in the country. Their offense is averaging 110 yards per game more than their opponent's average. That's number 10 in the country. And keep in mind, a lot of these games, the only bad game they've played so far has been North Carolina. Florida State, they led that thing. Let's go click on that. They led Florida State 42-0. Then they played a whole bunch of reserves in the fourth quarter. They play close to 110 players. So they do give up some scores late in the game, but they've been dominant almost every single game. Texas A&M score came with 6 seconds left. So A&M, while they got 291 yards, they were under 200 yards until they took the ball over on this final drive. The drive ate up 5:43, so they took over with 5:49 left in the game. They had under 200 yards offense. They got 91 yards in 16 plays and got a touchdown with 6 seconds left to only lose by 14. It was basically a 24-3 game. So once again, don't understand why Clemson continues to drop. I know right here everybody's looking at Trevor Lawrence, 8 interceptions. But guys, if it's a big game, are you going to take Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback? I would. They've got NTN at running back. They've got one of the best receiving corps in college football. The offensive line's allowed 5 sacks. They're averaging 6.4 yards per carry. The defense is dominant, and yet they continue to get beat up nationally and is talked about as not a good team. Yet they're the one. Do you see any red here? I see all green for Clemson. Every single stat is green. There's a couple of blacks in here, which is normal, but almost everything else is green. This is a very good Clemson team, and I'm surprised they keep dropping in the polls and keep getting beat up nationally. They deserve to be in the playoff, and they have one bad game. North Carolina, other than that, they've dominated every single foe they've played. I go over this one every week with you guys. And last week, like I said, 45-10 is the final score against Louisville, and they drop in the polls. Click on Oklahoma for a minute. Oklahoma's not getting beat up for anything. Look at the half for Oklahoma. 28-14 against West Virginia. Not a very good West Virginia team. They were at home. Clemson was on the road at Louisville. And you could see there is a little red in here for Oklahoma. Oklahoma's playing well, no doubt about it, but I'm just surprised that Clemson's getting so beat up. All right, let's continue to move on here. Let's go to another category, and we are going to go to the strength of wins, pain of losses for college football. How about that? Let's go see who's at number one. Everybody talks about Ohio State's schedule, but guess what? The teams they've defeated so far this year, 24 wins. That ranks number one. Now, LSU took a big jump last week. They're up here to 20 wins. Penn State's opponents, 20 wins. Wisconsin, 18. Auburn. Nobody's really talking about Auburn too much, but their opponents have won 18 games. Clemson, 16. Oregon, 16. SMU, 15. Cincinnati, 15. Alabama, 14. Florida, 14. Minnesota, 14. Oklahoma, 14. And then, once again, pain of losses. It's interesting down here. You get these teams here, Akron, UMass, Connecticut, all down here. Look at the teams they've lost to. Akron's foes that they've lost to have combined for 25 losses this year. And then you combine them. And here's something I want to point out. Ohio State undefeated, LSU undefeated, Penn State, Clemson. Cincinnati's got one loss, but that loss came to Ohio State, an undefeated team. So they have no losses in this category. SMU's got a loss. Florida's got a loss, but it came to LSU, undefeated. Texas is a 2-loss team, yet they have a 0 here in the loss column. Why? Their losses were to LSU undefeated, Oklahoma undefeated. So they have a 0 in their loss column. It's an interesting way of looking at things. Auburn, 18-1. Their loss came to a 1-loss Florida team. Oregon's 1 loss came to an Auburn team. Notre Dame's 1 loss came to a 1-loss Georgia team. Michigan has faced an undefeated team, Penn State, and a 1-loss team in Wisconsin. They only have a 1 in this column over here. And look at the bottom. Now, these teams in blue are the actual winless teams, but Connecticut, UTEP, South Alabama, New Mexico, Old Dominion, Troy, UTSA, and East Carolina may have won a game or two, but they've not defeated a single team that has won a game over an FBS foe this year. That's why they all have 0 in the win column. So go ahead, peruse around here, look through here. I think you'll find it very interesting. It's posted every week. Strength of wins, pains of losses for college football. All right, let's continue on. We're going to take a look at the first of your selections for this week. And we're going to take a look at a game that nobody really has an interest in this week. We're talking about Rutgers against Liberty. Who the heck cares about this game for starters? But you got a red-hot Liberty team, one that's won 5 in a row. Did you know Liberty had won 5 in a row? Probably not. Unless you've been following Liberty, then you know they've won 5 in a row. And they're taking on Rutgers. Rutgers is one of the worst teams in college football. Look at all these losses. They're not only losing, they're losing bad. In conference play, I point this out every week. Conference play, 171 yards per game, 3 points per game. You've seen me point this out every week. And once again, last week, they got drilled by Minnesota, 189 yards, 7 points. But here's the thing with Rutgers. Look at their non-conference games. They've played UMass and Boston College in non-conference. 548 yards, 380 yards. They're actually averaging 464 yards per game in non-conference play, 32 points per game. And remember, in the opening game, I used a ESPN play and an Inside the Press Box play on Rutgers over UMass. They won that thing 48-21. Now, granted, Rutgers has lost their quarterback. They've lost their running back Blackshear, but they still have some players. They have Big Ten players on the roster, and they have some pride. They're a touchdown plus underdog to Liberty. Now, the records are completely different here, but look at who Rutgers has been playing. Iowa, Boston College, Michigan, Maryland, Indiana, Minnesota. Liberty has been playing Buffalo, Hampton, New Mexico State, Maine. There's a couple of FCS teams in here. They lost to Louisiana by 21. They lost to Syracuse by 24. Buffalo, they caught in a good spot. Buffalo was off a big win at home and had to travel. So I look at this game, and the things I like, the strength of schedule, I have Rutgers number 30 and Liberty number 128. Rutgers versus non-conference teams, as you see, is a completely different team. They beat UMass 48-21. The Liberty on the road against Power 5 teams, 0-2. They lost those games by a combined 98-24 the last 2 years. And then we take a look at Liberty is over here. They're allowing their opponents 17 yards more than they come in averaging, and their offense actually averages 45 yards per game less. Now, Rutgers' stats are bad over here. As mentioned, their stats are horrible in conference play, but non-conference play a lot better. So I'm going to take a shot. Now, Rutgers has some pride this week. They're at home. They have a winnable game. They don't have any other winnable games this year. If they're ever going to win a game, it's this one. They're getting a Big Ten team getting a touchdown plus at home, plus 7.5. We're going to actually go with a team that I've been picking on weekly. I've been saying go against Rutgers every week. Their offense stinks in Big Ten play. I'm going to say they actually move the football this week in non-conference play. Take Rutgers plus 7.5 over Liberty. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. Before I get to your second selection today, we'll go back to the homepage, and we'll go to NFL info, and we're going to take a look at the offense and defense YPG. I want to point one thing out to you. Remember last week I brought up the fact that the Rams had gone from 6-1 prior to the year to win the Super Bowl. They were all the way down to 30-1 to win the Super Bowl last week. I said, wow. I mean, look at their losses. Seattle, close loss. Frisco, close loss. And Tampa Bay, everybody's entitled to a loss. And if Gurley gets healthy, they still have pretty much the same talent. And Cooper Kupp missed the end of last year. The Rams go out and crush Atlanta 37-10. Well, guess what? They just dropped to 25-1. And I got a feeling after they play Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Chicago at home, if they get Baltimore here, if they get Arizona on the road, all of a sudden the Rams are going to be 8-3. Guess what? The 25-1 odds will probably be down to 10-1 because this is a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, for crying out loud. And part of the reason that I did that was this chart right here. Offense and defense yards per game compared to what their opponents are allowing. The Rams are actually plus 82 yards per game. Now, this is on Phil Steele. This is in the magazine for the college teams as well. If I did an NFL magazine this year, I would have had this. This tells you what they did, in other words, against the Saints. They had 380 yards. That is 61 yards more than the Saints normally allow. They only allowed the Saints 244 yards. That's 131 yards less than what the Saints normally gain. So you add it all up here at the bottom, put those two totals together to come over here. San Francisco still number one in the NFL, plus 135.8 yards. The Rams, number 2. New England's right in there at number 3. The Saints have been super impressive, number 4. So all these teams at the top you expect to be there, I think with the exception of the Rams, because they were only 3-3 last week, yet they were number 3 on this chart. They've moved up to number 2 on the chart. So they are a team that's probably under the radar, and most of these other teams are not under the radar. But look at the bottom. I pointed this one out last week. The Chicago Bears. Which team doesn't belong? Bears, Super Bowl contender, right? They're in the same category of Miami, Cincinnati, Washington, and the Jets down here. And guess what? The Bears last week, let's see what they did. We'll go click on Chicago, and Chicago lost to the Saints. 252 yards. The Saints had 424, once again outgained by 172 yards. The Bears are 3-3, but they're minus 67 yards per game. They are not last year's Bears squad, I'll tell you that much. They're not playing that way. Look at this offense. I love the red and green, by the way, on Phil Steele Plus. All of these numbers here, all of these red numbers, they have not topped 300 yards in a single game all year, averaging just 264 yards per game. They cannot run the ball 70 yards per game. They're giving up 69% completions. The red and green really make it stand out. And they're in the same category as Miami, Cincinnati, Washington, the Jets. Normally in the NFL this year, you don't want to be in that category. So this is another interesting chart to take a look at each week. It's updated right here on the NFL team pages, and you could check that out. And remember, by the way, if you do sign up to Inside the Press Box, you get Phil Steele Plus for free. And with Phil Steele Plus, you can get Phil Steele Plus for the rest of the year. Just click over here on the homepage and go to the NC store and pick up on Phil Steele Plus if you'd like to have this all year long. Just click on the NC store, and right here's Phil Steele Plus. Go ahead and sign up for that. It's just $49 for the rest of the year with that $5 code that I put up every week. Let's go on to the next thing. We've talked about the Rams. We talked about the strength of wins. Let's go to, well, I think we talked about the college game already, so we're coming down to, let's go to the last thing for this week, which is the second play. And it's an interesting game we're going to take a look at. Last week it was my Mirage play of the week, and it worked out pretty good. It's this Bowling Green team. Bowling Green somehow, some way upset Toledo. Now, Toledo did lose their starting quarterback, Gadani, to injury in that game against Bowling Green. But Bowling Green was leading when that happened, which sort of surprised me. Toledo was horrible last week without Gadani at quarterback, so as you could tell, they struggle in that area. This week they're taking on Western Michigan, so let's go click on Western Michigan and see what we got going on in this game. Now, Western's a 26.5-point favorite. Seems pretty high, but here's what I like in this one. Let's take a look and zero in on the home and away factors. Bowling Green on the road this year. Here we are away. They have lost by 48 points per game. They're getting outgained by 372 yards per game. Now, are they playing superpowers? Well, Kansas State, good team, not a superpower. Kent State, good team, definitely not a superpower. And Notre Dame, okay, they did play a top-notch team on the road, but overall, they were minus 381, minus 390, minus 345. Their best game was actually Notre Dame, yardage-wise, minus 345. So they are minus 372 yards per game on the road. They lose their road games by 48 points per game. They did somehow, some way, beat Toledo, but other than that, they've been pretty poor against FBS teams. Then you look at Western Michigan. And with Western Michigan, let's take a look at their home record. On the road, not so good. They're losing by 17 points per game. At home, 44-14. They're winning by 30 points per game. That includes Georgia State, who they beat by 37. Pretty good Central Michigan team. They even beat Miami of Ohio by 22 at home, and they're only laying 26.5 to BG here. The other thing I want to point out is look at BG's run defense. 215, 5.3. They're giving up 6.0 in conference play. Western Michigan's got Levante Bellamy. And if you don't know who Levante Bellamy is, he's a guy that last year rushed for 1,228 yards, 6 yards a carry. He's having a very good year this year, 877 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. He got a little banged up, I think, in this Toledo game, but as you can see, he's back to the 100 yards. When you click on here, individual player stats, you got every game. So you could see how Wazink did in every single game. You could see how Bellamy's been doing in every game. He started out the season slow, 53 and 44 yards his first two games, but 192, 165, 105, 135, 113. I'm taking Bellamy as a fantasy player this week against this BG rush defense, which gave up 6.4, 6.9, 7.8 against decent run offenses this year. And when you can control the line of scrimmage like that, you're in pretty good shape. And something else I want to show you. If you go to this BG Central Michigan game, they only lost 38-20. And you're saying, well, that's not bad. But look, the half times here are very important. So you can see they were outgained 311-96 at the half, but they only trailed 21-7. And the key play there, let's click on the box score. It's going to show us the key play here. 100-yard fumble return for a touchdown. That means Central's on the door, about to score. Had they scored that touchdown, the halftime score would have been 28-0. Instead, it's a 14-point swing. BG returns a fumble, 100 yards for a touchdown. Not only they avoid giving up 7, they get 7 off the same play, despite the fact the offense did nothing. And even getting that 14-point swing, they still lost by 18 points at home against Central Michigan. And BG's played better at home this year, plus 53 yards per game, than they have on the road, minus 372 yards per game. So use these boxes. Look at these halftimes. You can see how the schools have done when they've played each other. You can see that Western they've struggled a little bit against BG recently, so they're not going to overlook BG. And I like the offense-defense matchup. I like the home-away matchup here. Let's lay the lumber. Minus 26.5, Western Michigan over Bowling Green. And that should do it. I'll have a whole bunch of stuff for you Friday morning on the news and notes. Probably have a good 7 selections for you. Make sure you're using the site to its fullest to see how the start charts are. Start charts. Look at this. Up to date on Bowling Green. You can see that they're starting offensive linemen, defense, who's playing, who's not. This is very valuable as the season goes on. You can tell the teams that are banged up. Last 40 years results. Now, Bowling Green will only have back to 87, so let's go find a real team or an actual Power 5 team here. Let's still take a look at Oklahoma, and you can click on the last 40 years results, go all the way back to 1976. You got lines on every game since 1976, who the coach has been in every single year. This is all at your fingertips. This red-green stuff goes all the way back to 2010. All this stuff at your fingertips every single game. I'll be back with you on Friday with the Friday News and Notes with 7 free selections. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell so we notify you that it's here. Give me a like, and also tell me what you'd like to see on News and Notes. We'd really like to make sure we get what you want to see.